Greetings. Christmas is coming and the goose is getting fat. Not long to go now. And today on the Hidden London Hangouts, we're going behind the ropes of some of the most amazing things in the museum in Covent Garden. I don't do this alone. I've got three amazing folk from the London Transport Museum. First up is Chris Nix, one of the big cheeses actually at the museum. There's an awful lot rides on your shoulders, isn't there, Chris?
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, well, I'm counting down the days to Christmas with the aid of a Johnston mug. But I think tonight it's time to crack out the exploring torch and go and have a real proper look behind the scenes at the museum.
You go and have yourself a proper probe. I've got my Johnston out as well for you. Siddy Holloway, you're more of a wine girl, aren't you, my lovely? But my glass is empty. What about yours?
I am more of a wine girl, and unfortunately mine is empty, but come Christmas it will certainly be full of Christmas cheer and maybe a liquid or two. But I am looking forward to this because I think there are so many little nooks and crannies of the museum which people don't really get to go on when they visit. So I'm looking forward to showing you guys around.
Those ropes drive me mad, honestly. I think to myself, I want to get in there. I want to get in that place. Well, today we're going to do this. Mummy Christmas is Laura Hilton Brown. And don't tell me, you've got tea in your mug, haven't you?
Do you know what? I'd love it to be a little mulled wine, but it's not. It's peppermint tea, which is not quite as exciting. I feel a little bit overdressed for this evening as well. I can't work out if I'm more Strictly Come Dancing or like some channeling of 80s Dynasty kind of Joan Collins thing going on.
You can be Crystal. You can be Crystal any day. Trust me, I've got more mugs here than I need. This is marvelous.
Yeah, only one mug.
And you are looking pretty gorge, actually, all three of you. Very, very festive. Chris has got his wreath, which is looking lovely. And Siddy's got her lights out. And then Laura, just, well, frankly, the princess of the ball today, aren't you, Laura?
Have I gone a bit over the top? Oh,
I just think you look great. I think you look absolutely fantastic.
Can you see the little mirror roundel there as well, or is it not reflecting? No.
Oh,
I've got a couple going on the old.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. And in the tree behind me, I'm in the kitchen today, by the way, just to let you know, I've got a dining table behind me. And in that tree over in the corner, a lot of my Christmas decorations are made of moquette. I'm sorry. Anyway, today on the Hidden London Hangout, as I say, we're going to have a look around some pretty cool parts of the museum, and we're doing it with some of the people who make all the decisions. So this is going to be one where you can have a little look at some of the more impressive artifacts up close and personal. But before we did that, I just wanted to, first of all, show you what the museum is looking like this Christmas, because I know that we're in a peculiar situation where it's shut at the moment because of COVID, but it still looks pretty blooming lovely. I mean, look at that. We've got the tree. Siddy and Chris, we're not allowed to really say this, but Siddy and I were going out for a lot of wine last week, and we decided to have photographs taken just under that tree, and it looked beautiful while Laura was having a gossip with a colleague, and so it looked really lovely. I think we'll all agree it looks beautiful, doesn't it, the museum?
It looks amazing.
Absolutely
Yeah, it always
stunning.
looks so festive, and it's a shame that we've had to lock down over Christmas because we've just moved to tier 3 here in London. But it's really looking beautiful, as it does every year.
Is it you, Chris, who goes around and checks the light bulbs on the Christmas lights to make sure which one's blown?
Everyone, personally, Alex, it's such a chore. But no, seriously, I mean, the staff put a huge amount of effort into dressing the place properly for Christmas. I think they've done a spectacular job this year. Love the buses in the tree there.
They are so cute, and the massive mirror roundels, I have to say, I've been coveting those every time I've seen them. But it's funny. I've got such fond memories of the museum. I've got such amazing, happy memories of my childhood trips there. But I was curious to know what your first memories of the museum were as people who work there. Chris, what was yours?
Well, mine's quite a long time ago now, 21 years ago to be exact. And I just remember the clearest image I've got is walking in through the front entrance. And I just remember walking around the back and seeing the Route Master bus sat there and going, yep, I'm in London Transport Museum.
So there it was. It was all out there for you. And of course, it's a bus situation. Siddy, for you, you've worked in museums all over London, really. So what did it feel like when you walked into the Transport Museum? And did you zip up your cagoule right to the neck?
You know what? I was trying to remember this. And actually, the first time I ever saw the museum properly, I'd been working there for nearly a week and not seen the actual gallery. because I was working in the back office in the safety and citizenship department. And because we used to work in Covent Garden, but in an old office block that kind of led into the museum, for some reason, I'd just gone up and down to the offices and no one had actually shown me the museum itself. So one day I walked through and went onto the bridge, which is sort of high above, and just saw the whole thing in its glory. And I just remember being like, wow, this place is like a child's dream.
And Laura, what about you? Because you've worked in transport for a long time, actually, and came to the museum. What was it like when you, I mean, you know, let's be honest, not everybody's a geek, are they? And for you, how did it feel when you walked in and saw loads of buses and trains?
Well, I didn't grow up in London, so I didn't come as a child. And I think that would have been a really lovely experience. I know a lot of my friends who have young families just love the London Transport Museum with their kids. So, yeah, I worked for TfL and I was going for an interview at the museum. And I thought to myself, I should really go and check it out because I hadn't been. It's actually really bad. I'd been to kind of the V&A and all of the other big ones, and I hadn't been to LTM. And I remember going along, and it was kind of a bit of a research trip. It was a little bit of kind of, you know, swatting up for my interview, basically. And I remember going in, and the word that struck me was TARDIS, because I thought this place looks small from outside. And I went in, just thought, this is way more impressive than I thought. Bigger, better, beyond what I thought. And I was like, right, I need to nail this interview. I want to work here. So that was my first experience. And I remember it really well.
Oh, that's so sweet. So this is kind of a determination. Yeah.
What was your first memory?
Well, mine, I have to say, mine is, you know, that for me, the London Transport Museum was a place where I used to go as a kid, and it was a particularly special. I always think about Christmas as being all about family. And for me, it's not just about enjoying the ones who are with us, but also remembering the ones who sadly aren't. And for me, going to the London Transport Museum was all about spending time with my late nan. And there was something, she was very, very respectful of your museum things, because I used to be clamoring to get past the ropes on those special things like the beautiful 1938 tube train or the buses. I loved the buses. I used to go to the museum on the bus and all the other bits and bobs. My nan used to say, those ropes are there for a reason, darling.
Oh.
Today, we're taking the ropes down, which is fantastic. Yay! And we're going to have a look on a very old tube train, which you're going to love. We're going to go on a tram run by horses. We're going to go in the back of a cab. Laura, I'm taking you in the back of a cab. And we're also going to be on a bus as well. So there's loads and loads of great things to look at. And we're going to find out a bit about the museum as well. And Chris, those artifacts that we're going to be looking at today, these are pretty special things, aren't they?
They really are. They're very old. They're quite exceptional as well. And for a transport museum, we do actually give a huge amount of access to our vehicles anyway. It's just that these ones that we're going to see today are either particularly fragile or have a high degree of original material, which if we had routine access to, they'd just be, they would wear away very quickly. So there's a good reason why you can't normally go into these parts of the vehicles, but it's great to be able to share them with people in this way.
Well, let's find out a bit more. Chris, first of all, had a chat with Elizabeth McKay, who's the Chief Operating Officer for the museum, and he took her into a very, very special location. This is the padded cell, the carriage from the City and South London Railway, the very first tube line in London.
So Elizabeth, we're in the City and South London Railway car. I pause there because I've got a question for you. When we travel in one of these on the tube, in any other railway in this country, we call it a carriage, but we don't. We call it a car. Why is that?
Well, I understand that's because of the early American influence on the technology, design, and then later, I guess, the financing of the London Underground. So we're in 1890, right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so in 1890, this car would have been part of an electric railway.
It was the world's first. 3 of these behind a tiny little electric Mather and Platt locomotive that we have at the front, and quite the experience. But it did catch on. You're right, and really that American investment that came next built most of what we know in central London, because this was a success.
Right. Well, it was later, right? It was Charles Tyson Yerkes, who was a Philadelphia financier, and he invested heavily in the Chicago Electric Railway, came to London, and that was in the early 1900s. That money then just started to, expand the underground, and we have a whole succession of American engineers, design that followed. So presumably that's why that terminology stuck.
Thinking about it, yeah, because they had Otis lifts in the stations. It's a wonder we don't call lifts elevators here as well. But the term tube car still sticks today when you hear it on an automated announcement on the tube. If you're being asked to move along, it's down the car,
Down
not the
the car,
carriage.
yes.
So,
And
yeah.
recently there was this Sherlock episode where they basically, one of the clues was this TFL boffin who almost turns to camera and explains that you're standing.
Exposition.
Exactly. It's like, you're standing in a car, not a carriage, and that's
This character here is quite important to us knowing about what it was like to travel in these tubes, these early tubes, which were much smaller, quite different to what we're used to. And I think you've been doing a bit of research into that, haven't you?
I was. So I've been reading about this first kind of trip in 1890, and this is A.H. Bevan, actually.
Right.
And he was a journalist and an author, and he wrote about one of these early trips, and it's really quite remarkable. I have to kind of quote from his account, because he is with a group of city men and engineers. So they descend into the railway, and he writes, "We're feeling like a batch of condemned criminals on a gigantic scaffold, waiting for the hangman to draw back the fatal lever that would launch them into the other world."
Wow.
Now, that's your description of taking this train, the padded cell?
I suppose it's fair enough if you've not been on it before. I have been on, tamer fairground rides than some tube journeys, so I suppose if it was that new, that's, yeah.
Do you know, I love Elizabeth. Yerkes, I love her. If they said, how much is that place worth? She'd probably say billions of dollars. She's amazing. Elizabeth is a star. And Laura, did you notice, by the way, I don't know how Chris kept a straight face, because we are not very good at having mannequins around. We tend to, well, in fact, actually, Laura is invariably the butt of the joke. What did you think of the mannequins, Laura?
So I love that you've just mentioned that, because it's like we have like this little kind of like thing going on. I wanted Chris just to lean back ever so slightly, because the mannequin chap next to him looks like he's having a right old snooze.
Yes, yeah.
It's just really quite scary.
It's
So
really
I like the one who sat next to Elizabeth. Isn't he modelled on our director Sam Mullins?
He is indeed, and in the extended version of that film clip, we do make reference to him doing our performance review while we're in the carriage. But I also hope you liked the reference to how big the train was. Did you catch that, Alex?
I did. What do we all think of that kind of the size of it? Because it all feels so cramped, doesn't it? It was like one of those kind of cliff lifts that you get in Scarborough.
You might almost say teeny tiny.
And
I heard
while we're
you
talking
do
about
that.
mannequins, there is
You were
that.
you were trying to be so professional in your interview, Chris, and then you were like, and we're here in this tiny.
I knew you
so
guys were going to
good.
be watching it, so I had to
I
do
love
that
the
for
fact
you.
that so many of these amazing catchphrases have caught. Oh, we've got anybody, we've got teeny tiny. We've also got, don't forget, 210, which is also one of my favourites from Laura.
I'd forgotten that one.
210. It's fantastic. And it also, at some point, we really must revisit the story of the mannequin at the museum depot, where Chris Nix lugged the squat frame of a conductress right in the way of Laura as she walked round. And I don't actually, how did you feel, Laura, as a rather rotund conductress was standing in your way who wasn't looking you in the eye?
Do you know what the strangest thing about that whole kind of little episode is I genuinely didn't see that Chris had done it. And I wasn't expecting it because we're always trying to kind of, you know, have a little bit of a laugh with each other. So when I turned the corner, I thought Siddy was showing me something. And then I just saw this kind of arm and leg round. I was like, oh my goodness, someone's injured, something's happened. And obviously in my house with kids, we shriek and we scream a lot. So that was my kind of initial reaction. But I do think quite a lot of the museum's mannequins are a little bit scary looking. Am I going to get in trouble for saying that?
They are creepy. You half expect one of them to say, I'll be your friend to the end. It's really, really terrifying.
Very important piece of interpretation.
Exactly. Well, you're just about to see, I think, a couple of mannequins actually speak to you, but not the mannequins that you think, right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's coming up.
Well, look, let's find out a bit more about the museum. We've been inside the padded cell. Let's go onto one of those beautiful Routemaster buses. There's two of them stand side by side. Two beautiful buses stand side by side. If you're ever in the museum, they're in the one on the left. And Siddy spoke to Molly Jackson, who's the Assistant Director for Retail at the museum.
So, Molly, here we are. We're sat in the iconic Routemaster bus. Probably the symbol of London, if you could say. What is your earliest memory of the Routemaster?
Well, I think I must have been about 7 or 8, and it really sticks in my memory because I was brought up abroad in Malaysia, and we may have had very unusual things in Malaysia, palm trees, whatever. We certainly didn't have Routemaster buses. And I must have been staying with a relative, perhaps my grandmother, because I remember going down Oxford Street with all the Christmas lights on the Routemaster, and we went upstairs, and I can remember the excitement as a little girl of climbing those stairs and settling in. Perhaps I even sat at the back, I really don't remember. But yeah, it was just an amazing way to see London. Yeah. And of course, the image of that red London bus, like for, I suppose, millions of people the world over, that means London to me ever since.
I agree. I mean, I remember the first time I came to London, I was desperate to go on a Routemaster because one of my favourite films was Notting Hill. And in that, he goes and jumps off a Routemaster right in front of the Ritz. And I just remember that and being like, got to do that one day. Definitely did on that first visit, so that's nice. So now, you know, you'd had that experience when you were such a young child, not knowing that in the future you would be tasked with the fact that you're going to be merchandising and selling this image.
So, as you say, when I was a little girl, I had no idea I'd end up working for London's Transport Museum yeah. or learning so much about the history of this bus. And now, of course, one of my responsibilities is our retail business here at London. We've been having a fantastic year, particularly online in lockdown. But one of our biggest selling product areas are products based on the Routemaster. So I'm wearing, in fact, it's last year's Christmas sweater. But you can see that the Routemaster is pride of place.
Here too, I'm wearing a children's jumper, but that's only because I liked the design of it. Works for all ages and sizes.
Well, you see, the Routemaster appears in every single Christmas jumper that we've ever produced, because that's what people want to wear.
Absolutely.
Here, modelling some more of our product.
Yeah.
I've got this beautiful scarf, reversible.
That's really lovely.
With Routemaster. And Christmas, going back to that Oxford Circus, Oxford Street light journey, you would have Christmas baubles on your tree with the Routemaster.
Well, it's so nice just to have a little kind of nod towards London. I think that's what people really like. And, you know, one of the lovely things that, I mean, it's kind of a gift really to a merchandiser to have this icon to work with.
Absolutely. And you know, whether you are a UK visitor that's come to London for a day trip or whatever, or you're a foreign tourist, or you live in London, everybody is happy to have a memory of the Routemaster.
I think you'll find, Molly, I'd rather have a tube train on mine. Instead, look at it. Look at it. It's loads of it. Siddy,
like
just
a B-type to me.
Siddy, how many balls of wool were used in that shot? There was an awful lot of wool.
Just sort of the amount of stuff that we had with us?
Well, you had the moquette, you had the 2 jumpers. I mean, there was Molly holding up every piece of retail that she could have done.
I know.
She did another couple of hands.
We were also making sure that we did a little promo for the our board of trade at the museum. So we were making sure we had all the gadgets with us. But there are so many amazing things that you could buy in the shop that nod to the Route Master. And they're little, as I say, it's so nice for people to have in their homes, because immediately when you see that, it brings up a memory. It stirs something in you, and it's something, as I say, it's a nod to London to keep in your own home, no matter where in the world you are. So I just think it's really lovely.
And if you want to learn more about the Route Master bus, and obviously we've got our own episode in Series 2 about the Route Master. Chris, the thing is, we all get fired up about all the bits and bobs that we talk about, but the Route Master particularly, it's something which Londoners just are still in love with. It doesn't matter whether or not it's on the road. People still just love the Route Master, don't they?
It's such a distinctive vehicle in its outline. It's the way it portrays London. And you think about all of those films that establish that you are in London by having a Route Master bus driving past the Houses of Parliament. It's just, an absolute go-to, because it's so instantly recognisable as of London.
It's like Route Master and drives past a phone box and Big Ben, and then you're like, I'm in London.
It's great, isn't it? And Laura, I suppose this is one of the little joys for you about, as someone who was imported into London, the Route Master bus when you got it.
I love a Route Master. And I was just thinking then when Molly and Siddy were doing, that was a really lovely little piece, actually. I thought that was a really lovely interview. And I liked that Siddy's bauble totally matched her jumper. Loving that. But I did a Halloween Friday late event at the museum back when I did event programming. And Siddy, I don't know if you'd have been at the museum then. Alex, you might have been at it, because you seem to have just been at every event that I've ever put on there. And Chris,
I've been a good customer. I've been a very good customer.
But I spoke to the head curator at the time, and I begged and pleaded that I could allow visitors at this event onto one of the vehicles, and I was allowed to get people onto the Route Master. And it was the Halloween event, and we had an actor at the front, and she was recounting, lovely urban myths and Halloween stories and tales of the tube, similar to our Halloween episode that we did on the Hangout a while ago. And we had another actor who was dressed as a mummy, so he was wrapped up in all of this crazy fabric. And we made the lights on the bus turn out, and he kind of like banged up the steps at the back and scared everyone. And everybody just loved that little bit of the event. And it reminded me then when Molly and Siddy were sat on the back of it then.
See, it's funny because I've got other memories of sitting on the back of a Route Master bus. But
I bet you do. I bet you do.
Yeah, probably not.
Once again, it's time for the weather.
Yeah, it was good. I generally always smelt of kebab as well, which was quite good. But don't forget, so far we've been on the City and South London Railway cab. That is episode number 1 of Series 2. We went to King William Street. Then we went on the Route Master. There's an episode entirely for that, just because it's Christmas and you might have some time to binge watch, because let's face it, you ain't going to the pub. Next up is Sam Mullins. Now, he was on a horse-drawn tram. Now, Sam Mullins, OBE, is the big cheese at the museum, and Chris Nix managed to remove the ropes and get him atop a horse-drawn tram.
Give you hear that sitting there? Quality, not quantity.
Well, here we are, Sam. We're aboard the Stevenson tram, one of my favourite vehicles actually here at Covent Garden.
It's one of those little kind of hidden interiors you don't get to see too often. It's lovely. It's a lovely example of the American connection. Stevenson's of New York, who built these in America and sent them as kit parts through Birkenhead for use in London. It's kind of part of that story of horse-drawn trams opening up the inner suburbs in London, 1870s, 1880s. And yet it's very much kind of East Coast of America design, with these fretted seats
and ventilated
seats. It's got louvered, all glazed windows.
Let's do the louvers.
Yeah, which I suspect is of more importance in the East Coast summer than it might be in Camberwell.
There's only been a few weeks of the year where it would be important here.
Yeah.
Drop window. We need the full ventilation.
You could see this running up and down New York streets or any other East Coast American city. Street tramways, of course, developed much earlier, in this, about a generation earlier in America than they did here. Those great big, wide streets you get in American cities, unmade, just asking for rails to be.
They've got the space for it.
They've got the space to do it. Yeah.
Now, I kind of know this tram from really a year or two after I joined the museum. I got my first visit inside what is a restricted vehicle because of all of this kind of a lot of original material in here. And I'm also used to taking people on private tours in here and sort of giving them that moment too. But I think you probably know a bit more about its history before it came to us, and also what it would have been like to travel in one of these when they were in their heyday.
Yeah, travelling in one of these in the around about 1900. There's a liberal social commentator called Charles Masterman who went to live in Camberwell in 1900, and at that time he wrote, "Our sole communication with London was a few erratic horse buses and lines of slow-moving two-horse trams, which diverged fan-like to the bases of the various bridges. Here at evening, a tired, indignant crowd fought silently for entrance into each successive conveyance, each tram. The young and old were squeezed out and occasionally trampled under, and then the crowded tram jogged off quietly into the night, and by the dim light of two odorous oil lamps, we contemplated the dismal countenance of our neighbours. Half an hour or so afterwards, perhaps 3/4, we were deposited amongst the crowded warrens which we call home."
Heavens. It's a wonder it caught on with that, isn't it? But I suppose if you contrast it with buses,
he goes on to contrast it with the fast lines of electric trams, brilliantly lighted, which reading is a pleasure, which were to come, a decade or two after these had their heyday.
Well, look, one of the things I really enjoy when I do bring private guests in here is the what you have to do to let the driver know you want to get off at the next stop, and it's your tram. So, I think you should try the bell.
I think we should get off at the next stop, which is, I think it's the last stop, which is Greenwich. This is the Waterloo to Greenwich tram.
Right.
And just to let the driver know,
right.
Do you know, there was so much in that film. I love that. I've even put my arms on the table. Where do we start? First of all, Sam Mullins, I love you. You turned me on, or rather you turned my lovely roundel on when we asked you to, when you come and join us on the Hidden London Hangouts. Also, you were in Routemaster socks. God, I love you. By the way, Mr. Nix, is not the best thing about your job the fact that you can completely ignore the please do not touch signs everywhere? You played with his louvers.
I have to be specially trained to do that before I touch, and if I break it, I'm in a lot of trouble.
That was good though. I managed to ding his dong, which was marvellous. And by the way, I just noticed as well, by the way, Mr. Nix, that there was beside him there was a little cushion made of moquette that I recognise. Anybody?
There was actually. In fact, I have a little swatcheroo of it from the old Maquettepedia here to assist anybody. We know you like to play along at home.
It's trams.
I love the fact that we now really slow down the telling of these, just so that people who are watching this can actually join in. This is wonderful, wonderful. So so there's a bit of moquette as well there, Chris. And I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful structure that you were sitting in.
It has to be said that the one disadvantage of having seats which are solid is if you sit for any length of time, you quickly start wishing for moquette. So I said to Sam before we went and did that, should we just take a cushion up each, see if we can get them out of shot? And we realised we couldn't. So
it reminds me of Terry Wogan at all these Eurovisions when he used to sit on a hard chair and he'd say, "Go and buy me a cushion." Of course, I did, because that was what I used to do. Laura, one of the things that I always think about whenever I see a tram, and lots of cities all over the place are using trams as an efficient and environmentally friendly form of transport. But let's be honest, nothing beats the tube, does it?
I was a student up in Manchester, and they've still got a huge tram network. So I kind of use the tram a lot, and it's really effective. But no, it's the tube just, it tickles your pickle a bit more, doesn't it, Alex?
It does, babes, it does. And also, Sidney, I noticed as well, I think maybe you spotted it on that film as well, that the horses talk. I seem to have turned into a horse whisperer. Quality, not quantity.
I like how they're like these kind of devious, like, I'll say, like these kind of slightly drunken dude horses, it seems like, you know what I mean? Sort of slight Borat meets, I don't know, a street urchin. But yes, the horses do talk in the London Transport Museum, so...
Tragically, Sidney and I have not been drinking out of this, but that's the only time I think Borat would meet anything really. But she's loving it. I tell you something, I really could do with charging my glass, but this is lovely. So we've been on the amazing padded cell, we've been on a Route Master, and we've been on a tram. Now it's fairly obvious that Chris and Sidney and I have been known to hit the booze of an evening after our Hidden London Hangouts as a way to wind down after a perfect evening. But Laura and I, we don't tend to go, unless it's a port night, Laura and I don't tend to go out that often. However, when we do, we might want to take a cab home. For once, and once only, I almost got her in the back of a cab. Do you know, we're stuck in a bit of traffic here. I've got right in front of a bus, but I'm in the back of a fairway cab here. Laura was meant to be here. But because of COVID, she can't be, so I've got some old bag sitting beside me. But Laura, you're at home, I'm here. We're here to talk about our favourite journeys in cabs. I could tell you the story about when 6 of us were going to go to Cumbria on a train. All the trains got cancelled, so we decided to take a taxi all the way to Cumbria for 480 quid. When we got there, I'm afraid the taxi driver was tired, so he slept in my bed, and then I sent him back to London. Best not to say any more than that. What about your favourite journey in a taxi, Laura?
I was going to say, I think we might need to save our some of our favourite cab journeys for a glass of prosecco and an evening out, rather than recording on a hangout. But hang on a minute, let me go with it. Okay, so I'm thinking that my favourite cab journey is probably when I first took my children into London, and it was around Christmas time. So, you know, similar to now with the lights and everything. And we took a cab up to the Royal Albert Hall, which is one of my absolute favourite buildings in London. And I took them to a show there, and the looks on their little faces when we jumped in the cab, because they'd never been in a black cab before. And it's an experience, isn't it? It's iconic. And maybe as an adult, you take that for granted, but they absolutely loved it. And so I'm going to go with that. But if I was with you there now, Alex, where I should have been, which is really unfortunate because of COVID, I would say that this is one of my favourite cab journeys as well. Sat with you, with Sidney filming, and Chris kind of in the crew too, because we've had a massive journey this year, right?
It certainly has been.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's been an amazing journey this year. And what I would say about these fairway cabs is that you can get, on a good day, you can get 5 people in here, which is great if you're going from restaurant to bar, which means that the driver always knows where he's going, and you can split the fare. It's fantastic. But you are dead right, actually. It's been a great year. We certainly get the 4 of us in this taxi under normal circumstances. But you know what, Law? I can't keep talking to you anymore because the meter's saying I'm on 25 quid and I can't go any further. I've run out of money.
All right. Merry Christmas. Bye.
Oh, she's so lovely, isn't she? Mummy Christmas, just looking after her kids, and there's me drunk in the back of a black cab.
So thoughtful, and we're all just like, oh, mine just went, I can't really remember mine.
Great though.
There's certainly a contrast.
It's just those fairway cabs are so wonderful because you get so many people in the back of them and you can share the fare, and it's great, and the cabbie always knows where he's going because they've all done the knowledge, that wonderful instruction map guide that all London taxi drivers have to do in order to pass their tests. They always know every little rat run and U-turn and everything else. And Chris, what is the story, by the way? Someone told me that the whole deal with those fairway cabs, they're designed in a certain way, so the turning circle works at the Savoy Hotel. Is that right?
Yeah, so they have to be able to turn within the space of a standard sized road, so that they can basically perform a U-turn very quickly without having to do a 3-point turn. And the road in front of the Savoy happens to be the right size that they can do that manoeuvre.
Oh! I just remembered something. Oh, yeah, Tooting! I need like a little buzzer or a hooter or something. We did an Acton Depot open weekend once, where we had a lovely selection of vintage cabs, but we also had a little driving test for the fairway cabs, so people could get into the cab and do that turn and do the drive.
And just to be clear, they had to show their driving license before they got to do it.
There was a lot of administration to get through, a lot of administration. And you had to pre-book a slot and we had to see all your ID, But yes, you can do
really cool.
For anything.
I think,
Anything.
I think we should do this in series 3. We should do a fairway cab test and drive it ourselves, and we could probably do it off road. There must be people out there. If you own a fairway cab, an old fairway cab, what?
Well, that event that Laura was talking about was we were helped by the London Vintage Taxi Association. So I suspect we can just reach out to them, and I'm sure they'll be able to assist.
That would be amazing. I would absolutely love that. You know, I used to be a driving tour guide around London, so I actually know my way around the streets of London very, very well. So beware.
I'm getting in Siddy's cab. She can drive a forklift truck. So
we all are. London, that's going to be great. Siddy can take us on a road tour in the back of a vintage cab.
I'll be your Stephen Fry, but instead of being in America or wherever, I'll just be in London showing you sort of dodgy places around Soho. No, actually,
there's not one job you haven't done, Siddy. This is absolutely amazing. It's like, oh yeah, and I used to drive taxis and show people around. It's amazing. So yeah, if you know, make our wish come true, because all I want for Christmas is a cab journey that I drive. So that'd be rather nice. So let's see if we can do that in the new year. I'd love to see whether all 4 of us could drive one of those fairway cabs. If you know how to do it, help us. Slip into our DMs, talk to Chris, talk to Siddy, talk to me, talk to Laura, and see what we can organise for series number 3, because it's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much for that canter around some of those lovely artefacts at the museum, guys. Thank you. As I say, Christmas is coming. Don't know why I'm talking in hushed tones. Kind of feels Christmassy. We have a competition running that has now closed, and we are delighted. And we set you a little competition question where you could win boxes of socks, which is what I'm missing out that one. Look at that, I'm obviously wearing those today. Chris, what was the question that we asked our lovely, lovely legion of fans?
You're going to have to remind me every time.
It was the maquette of the Isle of Wight.
Oh, yeah.
Hang on. You know, so what the first question in the quiz is, could you tell us what the question in the quiz was? Then
do you know what that reminds me of? Chris, we were doing that quiz with you, Alex.
Go back to Chris at the moment. Look what he's doing at the moment. He's actually faffing around with his maquette test. Look at this.
There it is.
Look at that. I can't believe it.
I feel like this is Chris's karma though, right? Because when we did that quiz with you, Alex, yes. And Chris gave me a really difficult question to ask you, and I totally.
Where was Edward Johnston born?
Yes,
Uruguay.
And I totally didn't know the question, and then messed it up. So this is back at you, Nixie.
Oh,
exactly.
Exactly. Payback always comes around.
Yes.
Who doesn't know about Edward Johnston being born in Uruguay?
Uruguay.
I just couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, you know, this is supposed to be a quiz that we're all supposed to answer. I haven't got the foggiest clue, and the questions are coming at me. It's like they're in some foreign language. I couldn't understand a bit of it.
But the one that was good was when you said, I mean, it was like it went from his first name to his place of birth.
There was no gradient. It was.
Yeah. Have you found it yet, Chris? What are you looking for?
Well, I need a visual aid, don't I? In fact, I need 2. So the question was, what maquette features on the 38 stock trains that are still just running on the Isle of Wight? Now, if you look at our 38 stock, you will, of course, see the 38 stock retrim in red and green, but the answer we were looking for was anybody?
There it is.
Which is, of course,
line, right?
Metropolitan line, as seen on the A stock trains.
Can I just say, Chris, I'm going to show you this film now. I went to the Isle of Wight on Saturday to have a little look, last Saturday, to have a look at the only remaining 1938 stock train that was running at the time. I booked the ferry, booked a hotel room on the Saturday night, sorted it all out, lovely, lovely. Just as I was about to board the train broke down and limped through the station. Here's the footage. But what you can see, of course, is the lovely trains that are going to be replacing them. So all's well that ends well. The winner of that competition is Alison Perry from St Albans. And team, just to let you know, she's a mega fan of the Hangouts. She absolutely loves what we do. And she's also a bit of a cheeky moquette fan as well, Sids.
Woohoo! Well done,
Alison!
So well done. She has won
look at-
either a box of that or a box of those.
Hopefully the box where Alex isn't wearing a pair is all I can say.
You'll get a brand new one, Alison. You'll get a brand new one.
Yeah, if one's missing, you'll know that they just teased it from me. It's going to be amazing. So no queries and questions, okay? Last week I actually very cheekily asked Chris Nix a question because I'd had a couple of drinks of Prosecco, as I tend to do. And me and my mate said, let's ride the Kennington Loop. If you don't know what the Kennington Loop is, on the Northern Line, some trains turn around at Kennington. So you can get off at Kennington. And then if you ride the loop, you actually pass Kennington again because it just goes round the loop to go back up the line further north. It's called the Kennington Loop. Some people have already ridden it already. There's T-shirts that some people get because they've ridden it and won it. However, things have changed, haven't they, Chris?
Yeah, so I think I answered last week that it's because it's not certified for passenger use on that bit. However, that's kind of it, but it's also classed as a shunting manoeuvre. So it'd be like going into a siding, for example, to reverse a train, and you just don't allow passengers to be part of that shunting manoeuvre. There is also another practical reason, which is the train may sit in that loop for quite a while before its slot to travel back north comes up. And again, we wouldn't want passengers sitting in there for any length of time without being able to get off the train. So there you go. There's 3 reasons.
Oh, nice one, Chris. Not so nice that I can't ride the Kennington Loop because I quite like to do that. But I reckon I did when I was a lot younger. I reckon I nodded off on the Kennington Loop and I came back and thought, oh, just left Kennington, just arrived in Kennington again. What happened there? And then suddenly realised what I've done. Strange life experience.
Is it just me? Or
that.
a lot of Alex's stories involve falling asleep on public transport.
Awful. You know, that my liver will be just used and chopped up for the cat, I think, before when I pass away. Anyway, Laura Rigsby has come up with another suggestion. Remember last week we were talking about the Mexican arrows at Holborn Station, and that was not Holborn Station, and that was about the direction signs that were used. And you mentioned the number of flights on the back of it got less as the years went on to the point we haven't got now. But we asked, what's the history of it? Well, Laura says, not sure if this is the answer, but if you search for Aztec arrow on the web, presumably, it looks quite similar to the Mexican arrows on the old underground signs. I think they look very Native American in style. What do we reckon, Sid? Is there any validity in that?
Yeah, I think that maybe a good, there's a good suggestion because they do look like, as she says, kind of a typical Aztec arrow that would have been, you know, maybe on murals or any kind of works of art in the Aztec era. So maybe that's where the inspiration comes from. And of course, the Aztecs were from Mexico, what we now know is Mexico. So that might be why it's called that.
I love it. Siddy, first of all, thank you so much for being part of our little canter around the roped off areas of the museum. You are gorgeous. You're also going to give me a run for my money with your interviewing.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, I mean, gosh, yeah, I just, if you pop me on a Route Master bus and just, you know, slot anyone next to me and I can ask them all about their merchandising.
And you want to see more of Laura, City on the television? We'll tell you more next week. Laura, as always, my beautiful, thank you so much, Mummy Christmas. You've been wonderful.
Super duper, thanks to you. I think that from those little clips, Chris has got maybe a second career in a bit of window salesmanship, don't you?
There are a lot of
only if they've got louvers, Laura.
There are a lot of blinds
Expertly done.
companies having Christmas sales at the moment. Chris is there rolling them up and down. Like, look, aren't they free flowing? It's going to be great. And Chris Nix, thank you very much. I'd take a couple of Venetians for the front.
Thank you, Alex. A fine work with the jumper, by the way, this week. And I think next week we're all going to have to be jumping up because it's Christmas.
Let's do it.
I might ruin the game actually by doing like a moquette style shirt just to kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons. But
You deserve all the itching.
I love it. And don't get them wet because they weigh a ton. So if you're on Instagram, find us, Alex Grunden, Chris Nix, City Holloway, Hidden London Law, and at LT Museum. And don't forget, right the way through Christmas, we're going to be with you on Saturdays. So next week, Boxing Day, we'll be here with a little episode as well. It's going to be cute, very, very cute. Also on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and like and comment, and join us at 6 o'clock every Saturday as we chat along live with every episode. So from all of us, from Chris, Siddy, Laura and myself, have yourself a great day, the warmest and merriest of Christmases, and stay safe.